Blymanor was a very big and beautiful mansion in Scotland. In 1974, a man named Robert de William bought the newly built mansion of Blymanor and started living there. He stayed there for only 27 days, one night. The watchman of Blymanor saw William running away from there, scared and covered in blood. William stopped near the watchman and gave him some money and asked him to run away from there. After that night, William never returned to Blymanor. After 5 years, William's sister and his brother-in-law died in an accident, due to which the court handed over the responsibility of his niece and nephew to William. William reluctantly accepted the court's order. But to get rid of those children, he sent his 12-year-old nephew Ron and 7-year-old niece Sophie to live in Blymanor. There, Mrs. Mendy, the caretaker of that mansion, started taking care of the children as well. William used to send money for the house every month, but never came to Blymanor to meet them. After about 7 months, William hired a home teacher for Ron and Sophie, whose name was Jewel Adams. The very next day, Jewel went to Blymanor. She met Mrs. Mendy and the children there and was very happy. But Ron and Sophie were very surprised to see Jewel. She forgot about it as a misconception and started planning to teach the children. After some time, Jewel again saw the same boy at her window. But this time she felt that as if he was calling her. Jewel went out to the yard and looked. But there was no one there. She went back to her room. But as soon as she entered the room, she saw a young girl sitting on her bed. Jewel was shocked. She called the girl, but she did not respond. Jewel then went to her and put her hand on her shoulder. But as soon as she touched her, Jewel got a strong shock and fell down. Then the girl got up from the bed and her skin started melting slowly. Blood started coming out of her eyes, as if someone was eating her from inside the body. It was scary. Seeing the scene, July started screaming badly, then Mrs. Mandy. Ron and Sophie came to her room and started asking Jewel the reason for her screaming. Jewel did not tell them anything and thought that maybe she is tired due to so much traveling and all this is her illusion. While having dinner, July noticed that Sophie is smiling at someone. When Jewel asked her, Sophie again replied rudely. Mrs. Mandy was about to scold Sophie for this, but Jewel stopped her and started talking to Sophie lovingly. Jewel also gave Sophie an ice cream and she thanked Jewel. That night while sleeping, Jewel felt as if someone is knocking on her window. She woke up and saw that there was no one there. She lay down again. But after some time she heard the sound of breaking glass. Jewel got up in panic and saw that someone has broken her window with a stone. She went outside and saw that Ron was standing with a lot of stones in his hand. And he was staring at something. As he was leaving, Jewel called him many times, but he did not respond, and then suddenly he threw all the stones and ran inside the house. Jewel also started following him inside the house, but as soon as she reached the door, some invisible power threw her back in the air and the door of the house closed automatically. There was a window above the door. from which Jewel could see the same girl again, who was in her room earlier. That scary girl was staring at Jewel as if she wanted to kill her. Seeing all this, Jewel got so scared that she fainted right there. But when she woke up in the morning, she was in her room. Seeing this, Jewel was very shocked, because last night she had fainted in the yard. The same morning, Mrs. Monday brought tea for Jewel in her room. Jewel asked her how she came back to her room. Hearing this, Mrs. Mandy was shocked and she told July that she was in her room the whole night. Jewel's eyes went to her broken window. But the surprising thing was that the window was completely fine at that time. Seeing this, Jewel thinks that maybe she was seeing all this in her dream. In the afternoon, when Jewel was teaching Ron and Sophie, Sophie suddenly got up and started shouting at Jewel and started saying that Miss Donna did not teach like this and she wants to study from Miss Donna only. Jewel left from there and went to Mrs. Mandy and started asking about Miss Donna. Miss Mandy told Jewel that before that Miss Donna used to give tuition to the children. But after Donna's arrival, the behavior of the children had completely changed. And they had become so unruly that they were even expelled from the school. But a few days after that Miss Donna died, Jewel wanted to know more. But Mrs. Bonday made some excuse of work and left from there, leaving that matter incomplete. The next day, Jewel is back in search of the children when she hears some sound from the basement. Jewel heard those sounds and went down to the basement. She saw someone sitting there. As soon as she went near her, she was shocked. It was none other than Miss Donna. Donna's head was in her hand. Seeing this, Jewel's feet slipped. She got scared and ran out of the house. She saw Sophie sitting in the yard and playing with the ghost of Donna. Jewel held Sophie's hand and took her inside the house. Then Jewel saw the same boy at the window again. But this time, his face changed into that of a devil. Leaving Sophie inside, Jewel came out to find Ron. Jewel brought Ron inside as well and tried to explain to them calmly. She was repeatedly asking Ron about the boy at the window. But he did not say anything. Then Sophie told Jewel that the boy at the window was their driver, Peter. Peter used to take them to school, and then Peter and Miss Donna fell in love. But after a few days both of them died. Jewel was shocked to hear this. She had understood that the spirits of Peter and Miss Donna were trying to capture this house and those two children. Jewel hugged the children and told Mrs. Monday to write all this in a letter and send it to William so that William knows that the children are in danger. Mrs. Monday wrote the letter and put it in the post box, but Ron took out that letter and burnt it. One night while sleeping, Jewel opened her eyes and Sophie was standing in front of her with a knife in her hand. Jewel got up in fear and took the knife from Sophie. Then Jewel saw Donna's ghost standing behind Sophie. That very night she sent Sophie with Mrs. Monday to the city, to William. She searched a lot for Ron too, but he was not found anywhere. The next day Jewel was searching for something in the basement when she suddenly saw some ritual signs on the back wall. She also found two strange dolls lying there on which Sophie's name was written. She also found some tips to please Satan written below which Donna and Peter's name were written. She understood that Donna and Peter used to worship Satan and to please him they wanted to control children and sacrifice them. But their magic backfired on them and both of them died, and even today they are after Ron and Sophie's souls. Meanwhile, Jewel got a call from Mrs. Mendy and she started telling her that Blimner was built on a graveyard and William used to see a lot of ghosts here, and he was so scared that while running he fell down the stairs and was covered in blood. Jewel got very scared after hearing all this, and she understood that Blimner was much more dangerous than she had thought. Before she could do anything, Ron arrived there. And then July saw the ghosts of Donna and Peter standing behind him. Ron was crying badly. He suddenly shouted loudly and fell there. As soon as he fell, the souls of Donna and Peter disappeared. By the time July touched Ron's body, his breathing had stopped and the body had become cold. The next day, William sent a car and called July to the city. From that day onwards, Bly Minor was locked forever. If you liked our story, then do not forget to subscribe to our channel Cooney Monday. And also follow our Instagram page and Facebook page.